Hello everyone, welcome to Quiz Education. I am Anamika Das and in this video we are going to discuss about complex number, that is about a topic of class 11 mathematics. So let's discuss it. So what is a complex number? So before that we should know why we are discussing about complex number. That is, in earlier classes we have discussed about quadratic equation. That is, a quadratic equation is of the form ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0. That is, from that we can find d, that is d equal to b square minus 4ac, and if d is less than 0, then what we will say? That we will say that roots are imaginary. So for the roots which are imaginary, then that numbers will be called the complex number. That is, for example, we have taken the example that is x square plus 1 equal to 0. So if we simplify it, then what will be the value of x? That is x square equal to minus 1. That is, x is plus minus root minus 1. And we know that if root can be negative, that is, root can be negative under root, so we denote this root minus 1 by I, and this root minus 1 is called imaginary unit. That is, I is called imaginary unit. That is, I equal to root minus 1. And it is imaginary unit. So a complex number is a number of the form a plus ib, where a and b are a real numbers and I is the imaginary unit. That is, for example, if we take an example, that is 2 plus 3i. Here you can see that 2 is real number, 3 is real number, and I is what? Imaginary unit. And in place of I, what we can put? That is, in place of I, we can just put root minus 1. So a number of the form a plus ib, that is, we have taken this example, so a number of the form a plus ib is called a complex number. So we have taken I equal to root minus 1. So what will be the square of I? That is square of imaginary unit. That is, square of imaginary unit would be minus 1, since we can cut 2 and root, that is equal to minus 1. And what is the cube of imaginary unit? That is root minus 1 whole cube, and we can write it as minus 1 whole square into minus I, and from here we get the value of I square, that is minus 1 into root minus 1, and we can simply write it as minus, and in place of root minus 1, what we can write? That is I. So minus I. So I cube is equal to minus I. What will be the I to the power 4? That is, just simply find the value of root minus 1 to the power 4, that is equal to, we can write it as root minus 1 whole square into root minus 1 whole square, that is equal to minus 1. We have already got it, and it is also minus 1, that is minus a minus a plus, that is 1. So I to the power 4 is 1. So if we are asked to find a value, that is, what will be the value of I to the power, suppose I to the power square plus I to the power 4 plus 3i cube. So what will be the value? We know that I square is minus 1. And what is I to the power 4? I to the power 4 is 1. And what will be I cube? That is, we write 3 into I cube, and I cube is minus I, that is minus I. So it is equal to minus 1 plus 1 minus 3i. We can cut it, so our answer will be minus 3i. So it is easy to find the value of any number which have imaginary unit, that is any complex number. So when we call two complex numbers are equal, so for example, if we have we denote a complex number by z, which is of the form a plus ib. We have discussed it in the previous slide. So when we call two complex numbers are equal, for example, I have taken z equal to a plus ib. Again, for example, I have taken z equal to c plus id. When we call these two complex numbers are equal, if this I have forget to tell about it, that that we can write a complex number by z equal to a plus ib, that is a plus ib form. So we can write z equal to a plus ib, and this a is called the real part of z. This is called the real part of z, and this portion is called the imaginary part of z. Got it? So this part is called real part of z, and this part is called imaginary part of z. So if the real part of this complex number, that is a, will be equal to the real part of this complex number, that is c, and if the imaginary part of this complex number and the imaginary part of this complex numbers is equal, then we will call that the complex numbers are equal. That is, if real part of z1 is equal to real part of z2, and imaginary part of z1 is equal to imaginary part of z2. If imaginary part of z1 is equal to z2 and imaginary part of z1 is equal to real part of z1 is equal to real part of z2, then we will call that the two complex numbers are equal. So for example, I have taken z1 equal to 3 plus 4i. Again, I have taken z2 equal to 3 plus 4i. So here two different complex numbers, that is we denoted it by z1 and we denoted it by z2. Here a is equal to 3 and what is the imaginary part, that is 4i. So what will be the b, that is b is equal to 4. And here what is the real part, that is 3. What is the imaginary part, that is 4i, and what is the d here, d is 4. Since the real part of this complex numbers is equal to the real part of this complex number, and since the imaginary part of this complex numbers is equal to imaginary part of this complex number, so these two complex numbers are equal to each other. Again, for example, I have taken z1 equal to 2 plus 3i. Again, z2 equal to I. Here we just we can tell it by simply just solving it. That is, here the real part is 2, but here what is the real part here? That is, there is no real part here. That is, we can write it as 0 plus I. So real part is 0. So since here the real part is 2 and here the real part is 0, so these two complex numbers are not equal. That is, z1 is not equal to z2. So if we are asked to find that if the two complex numbers are equal, then we will just simply simplify this. That is, we will find the real part of z1 and real part of z2 and imaginary part of z1 and imaginary part of z2. Then if the real part of both the complex numbers are equal and imaginary part of both the complex numbers are equal, then we will say that z1 is equal to z2. So that's all for today. Thank you, students.